Bake infinite pi with x plus y. X and y are dreaming of pi. X is imagining an infinitely wide pie, like an endless ocean or an open sky. Y is longing for an infinitely tall pie, like a dizzying mountain or a tree growing high.
How can we bake infinite pi when it isn't real? Asks X, who's curious but cautious. We can find a way, says X, who is bold and daring. I know just who to ask.
Aunt Z can do anything with her brain. She can create worlds large and small with giant beasts and tiny creatures. When X and Y see the distant look on her face, they know that means she is thinking of a new dessert or a four-dimensional dream. X doesn't want to disturb her dream, but Y is too excited.
Aunt Z, can you help us make infinite pie?
Aunt Z thinks for a moment. There are infinite different ways to make pastry, she says. We just need flour, butter, and water. But there are infinite possibilities for the amounts we use and the ways we mix them.
Let's start with an easy way, says X, who likes to take things nice and slow. Let's start with a hard way, says Y, who sometimes goes unwisely fast.
Aunt Z smiles and starts getting ingredients out. First, we mix 1 part butter with 2 parts flour, she explains. We rub it together with our fingertips, then mix in water and knead with our hands.
Well, what about our elbows? Giggles X. What about our feet? Jokes Y.
Your fingers are much more delicate, explains Aunt Z, and much cleaner. Now, let's roll out our pastry, says Aunt Z.
I'll make a circle, says X, who likes building up to difficult things gradually. I'll make a triangle, says Y, who likes diving into difficult things straight away.
I'll make a square, says Aunt Z. The circle is the easiest to roll out. Now it's time to fill our pies, says Aunt Z. What filling shall we have?
I want bananas because the slices are round like my pie, says X. I want strawberries because the slices are triangle like my pie, says Y.
Are there any square-shaped fillings? Asks Aunt Z, gazing at her pie.
Chocolate squares, shout X and Y together. It seems to be taking infinitely long, says Y.
That's because you're excited, says Aunt Z. It makes time seem infinite. Finally, the pies are ready.
It smells infinitely delicious, says X, who's easily pleased. But it's not really infinite, is it? Asks Y, who always wants more.
Why don't you eat half? Says Aunt Z. Now, eat half of what you have left. Now, eat half of what you have left again. You'll never finish, so your pie will last until infinity.
I like the corners best, says Y. Aunt Z's square pie has the most corners. corners, says X.
What if we made a pie with 5 corners? 6 corners? 7 corners? Infinite corners, suggests Aunt Z.
Well, my round pie has infinite corners, says X. But it doesn't seem like it has any corners, says Y.
Aunt Z winks at them, knowing just what to do. Let's make infinite corners, pointy ones that you can really see, says Aunt Z. They roll out a very big circle, which Aunt Z cuts into a triangle.
That only has 3 corners, says Y, who is not very patient. Aunt Z hasn't finished yet, says X, who is good at waiting.
Aunt Z begins to stick on some pieces of dough.
It has 6 corners, says Y. It has 12 if you count the ones pointing out and pointing in, says X. Do those count as corners, they ask?
It's up to you, says Aunt Z, smiling.
Now our star has even more corners, says X. I've lost count, says Y. It has 48, says X, who has been counting carefully.
Aunt Z sticks some more pieces on.
Oh no, now I've lost count too, says X.
If we keep going forever, we'll have infinite corners, but properly pointy corners, says Aunt Z. Let's not waste the leftover dough, says Aunt Z. They roll it out into a big circle and cut out 3 circles.
Now more circles will fit, says Y.
Let's look for a smaller cutter, says Aunt Z, rummaging around in a cupboard.
I found one, says X. No, no more circles will fit, says Y, who sometimes gives up too easily. Maybe Aunt Z has infinitely small cutters, says X, who believes in Aunt Z's powers.
Close your eyes, says Aunt Z. When they open them again, she is holding a smaller cutter, and a smaller one, and a smaller one.
Now my pie goes on forever and ever, says X. My pie goes all the way into the sky, says Y.
Are you happy with your infinite pie? Asks Aunt Z.
Not yet, now X and Y. Let's make more difficult pastry, Y begs Aunt Z.
We'll use more butter this time, says Aunt Z, mixing a little butter with the flour.
That doesn't look like more, says Y doubtfully. Maybe we're not done yet, says X hopefully.
Aunt Z takes out a whole slab of butter and wraps it in the dough like a package. Now fold it in 3 layers and roll it out again. Now fold it in 3 and roll again.
3 times 3 is 9, says X thoughtfully. And again, Y shouts. That makes 27. And again, asks X. That makes 81. And again, shouts Y. Again. That makes 243. And again, asks X again. That makes
729, says Aunt Z, pointing at her calculator.
And are we making infinite layers, asks X?
We're making exponential layers, says Aunt Z. The numbers grow fast with our folding, and we can watch the layers grow in the oven.
It looks like it's growing to infinity, says Y.
Can you feel the layers melt on your tongue? Asks Aunt Z. The layers are almost infinitely thin.
Making it infinitely delicious. X and Y agree with delight.
We'd better clean up, says Aunt Z. But a clean kitchen just makes me want to bake more pie.
Let's bake more pie, cheers X. And then every time we clean up, we'll bake some more pie, says Y.
We'll need an infinite kitchen to hold our infinite pie, says Aunt Z, and infinite friends to share it with.
That's us.
The end.
What a beautiful, yeah, a beautiful book, Eugenia. Love it.